Welcome back in. Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. Time right now in our Princeton Orthopedic Associates studios, 441. Fun to talk to Jeff Mosher a few moments ago. Now we go out to the phone lines and welcome in a New York Daily News NFL columnist, and that is the great Manish Mehta who joins us right now. Manish, thanks for a few minutes, and how are you?
I'm good, Zach. How you doing?
Well, I'm doing great. I was not aware that you were an Eagles fan. Where did you grow up?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm an Eagles fan. I grew up an Eagles fan, but I'm from the Northeast.
So are you enjoying what you're seeing, though, with Carson Wentz? I'm sure you still have a lot of friends that are Eagles fans.
Yeah, I do have a lot of friends and family who are diehard Eagles fans. It's a pretty remarkable story. I'd say it's probably the biggest, well, if not the biggest surprise in the league. Among the top handful, there's another quarterback in Dallas who's having a pretty good start in his career as well. But, look, I think the guy's the real deal. And I think we'll see that not only for the remainder of this season, but for many years to come. If he can stay healthy, I think he's going to be a special player.
Who do you think will be a better quarterback long-term, Dak Prescott or Carson Wentz?
I think it's Carson Wentz. He's got more tools. There's a reason why he was the number 2 pick overall versus a mid-round pick like Prescott was. And I think Prescott's a good player, but I do think that when Tony Romo is healthy, whenever that'll be over the next several weeks or so, I think he'll be the quarterback. And now, I think he has a good future. But I think that Wentz is a guy who I believe we'll be talking about as among the handful of best quarterbacks over the next decade. Again, if he can stay healthy, because from what I've seen thus far and what I know about him, I think that he can he can take the Eagles to maybe unprecedented levels. And I don't want to guarantee a Super Bowl; it's way too premature for that. But he's an extremely talented guy, and you can see that even now, only a few games into his career.
Covering sports for a very long time, the best success is the unexpected success, and that's what you're seeing with this Eagles team, whether it's Carson Wentz or Doug Peterson. But with Carson, what impresses you the most so far in his young career with the games that you've been able to see?
He's got a command of the offense. You can see that on television. And he's got an incredible work ethic. Of all the things that I've heard about him from teammates and coaches to this point, the one thing that really jumps out to me is what Jordan Matthews said after their last win against Pittsburgh a week and a half or so ago. He shared this story about how he was coming downstairs from the team hotel to have breakfast before the game, and Wentz was finishing up breakfast and on his way to watch film. He said, "Where are you going, Carson?" He said, "I'm going to watch film." And of all the years that I've covered the NFL, maybe it's happened. I don't know, but I haven't been aware of a quarterback who watches film the morning of a game. I don't know if he was watching film of the Steelers, watching film of himself, but the fact that he is completely all in here in terms of wanting to be great is a rare quality, because there are a lot of quarterbacks in this league who are talented, who come into the NFL with a lot of ability and want to be great and like the idea of being great, but don't necessarily put in the time to make that happen. And it seems like, from everything that I've heard, Wentz really, does want to put in the time and the effort. And at that position, the mental component of the game is maybe not as important as the physical component, because you need to have the arm and the measurables and all of that. But it's certainly a big part of playing quarterback that a lot of players who are physically gifted don't have.
It's that obsession of loving the game. You're absolutely right. You see it with Tom Brady. You saw it with Peyton Manning. And you also saw those two quarterbacks make players around them even better and have big-time years. And right now you have 9 Eagles players right now on the offensive side of the ball with at least 1 reception. So you also see that trait. That really is what impresses me the most with the kid and Carson Wentz.
Yeah, he's going to have to do that right now because they don't have that dynamic weapon to throw to. I think Jordan Matthews is a quality number 2 receiver in this league. He's certainly not a game breaker by any stretch of the imagination. They don't really have any game breakers in the backfield. Every now and then Darren Sproles can make something happen, but he's obviously in the twilight of his career as well. So I think, again, he's only going to get better when he gets better skill position players around him. I think you saw that a little bit with Donovan McNabb earlier in his career. He didn't really have any dynamic weapons, and then he had that brief period with Terrell Owens where he took his game to a new level because of the talent that he had at the wide receiver position. So I think the Eagles will surround Carson Wentz with better players in the coming years, and that's just going to add to really not only his success but the team's success.
Manish Mehta with us on the Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. So good quarterback play in Philadelphia, not so much good quarterback play with the New York Jets, as Ryan Fitzpatrick has been awful. 9 interceptions in the last 2 games. Can't win football games with that turnover rate. Next 3 games at the Steelers, at the Cardinals, and then the Ravens. How short do you think the leash is on Ryan Fitzpatrick before they go to Geno Smith?
Well, nothing's imminent. Let's put it that way. They didn't have this protracted contract stalemate in the offseason to pull the plug on Ryan Fitzpatrick a month into the season. They knew that the first 6 weeks were going to be tough. On paper, clearly it was, with 5 playoff teams on the schedule, and the only non-playoff team on the schedule in this really difficult start to the season was Buffalo on the road in a short week, and Buffalo had beaten them twice last year. So it was daunting. I don't think anyone was surprised by that. I think the Jets will reassess after week 6 or 7. I don't think they're going to pull Ryan Fitzpatrick before that, unless he's absolutely horrific. And if he starts throwing 3-4 picks against Pittsburgh, or God forbid more than that, maybe Todd Bowles will have no choice but to make a change. But what I ultimately think is going to happen is that Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to be the starting quarterback if and when they are eliminated from postseason contention, and to me that means 7 or 8 losses. At that point, I think they would turn to Bryce Petty and see what they have in him for the future, because there really is not that much upside at all in turning to Geno Smith. He's on the final year of his contract. He's not going to be back with this team next year. You know what you have in him, and you really got to figure out what your starting quarterback situation is going to be in 2017 and beyond. And Bryce Petty showed some quality flashes, some promising moments in the preseason. So if they are eliminated, from postseason contention in 6-7 weeks from now, I think they would turn to Bryce Petty before anybody else.
There was no question they had to bring back Ryan Fitzpatrick coming off the year that he had, but let's all remember, and this is a lot of people's concern, he is a journeyman quarterback for a reason. He doesn't have a lot of consistent success in the National Football League. Now, I don't believe anyone could predicted the amount of turnovers that we've seen in the last 2 games, but this doesn't surprise you, this poor play, right, Manish?
Well, I don't really buy into that. I know that's a common theme, and that's an easy way to look at it and say, well, let's look at the first decade of his career, and he's up and down. Look, he's never had this type of skill position talent around him. Now, it's severely hampered by the fact that Eric Decker's not going to be around for the foreseeable future. I wouldn't be surprised if he's out for the year. So now you're down to 1 weapon, and it's Brandon Marshall. When he had the 2 weapons last year, I don't think it was a fluke. He's clearly comfortable in Chan Gailey's offense. But you can't make excuses for the numbers. They are what they are. 9 interceptions in the last 2 games. 7 of those 9, I believe, came in the fourth quarter. And that can't happen. I mean, it can't happen if you have any desire of being a legitimate playoff team, and everybody knows that. It's not a big secret. And look, if you examine the 6 picks that he had in Kansas City, the first couple were crushers. They absolutely were, and he deserves blame for that. He should be criticized for that. When you look at the tail end of that game, he was trying to force plays. They were down by 3 touchdowns. He added to the total, and 6 looks absolutely horrible. I don't know if I take too much stock in it. I think when you look at that game objectively, you just got to say it was a horrible performance. 6 interceptions looked especially horrible, but I don't know if he can turn it around. I know that he has all the confidence in the world that he can turn it around. The Jets really have a belief, as they should, that he is clearly their best option to turn it around. I don't know if it's going to happen, but what I do know is if they don't win these next 2 games in Pittsburgh and on Monday night in Arizona, if they're not 3-3 after this 6-game brutal stretch to start the season, they're not going to make the playoffs.
Can't you save this season, though, with just winning 2 out of the next 3 with the 3 easy games that come after that? Can't you save the season that way, though, instead of having to win the next 2 games? Because winning in Pittsburgh, that's going to be almost impossible.
Well, at that point, they would be 3-4 entering the final 9 games. You still have 2 games left with the Patriots. Obviously, that's not easy. You've got the Colts. You've got who else do you have? There are no cupcakes. So you got the Bills again, and the Bills obviously know them well and probably going to have a little bit of revenge on their minds after what happened in week 2. So I don't know if anything is easy. I know on paper maybe the schedule lightens up a little bit. The only game that I would be shocked that they lost would be against Cleveland. Maybe that's the only quote-unquote easy game. I think when you look at this team objectively, and it's not just the quarterback position. Clearly, the quarterback gets the spotlight as he should when things are going bad or going poorly. But the secondary has played absolutely brutal. It's been a terrible secondary that's given up big play after big play. And every game that they give up big plays, you hear Todd Bowles say, well, there's miscommunication or no communication. And over the past 24 to 48 hours, you've heard players on the back end say there's miscommunication. And then you've heard Todd Bowles say, well, this is as simplified as it can get. And it's not necessarily miscommunication, maybe a lack of being vocal. I don't know exactly what the problems are, but I know that they need to get fixed. And I also know that they don't have a dynamic player on the back end anymore. Darrelle Revis is a nice name. He's got name recognition. I think he's going to end up in Canton one day. But that doesn't help out the Jets in 2016. He's a subpar cornerback who's getting beat, who's getting injured, who's getting old pretty fast right before our eyes.
You're hearing the same answers with Todd Bowles. There's no question about that. It's very Belichick-like, but Belichick has 4 Super Bowls to his name, so he can't have those same type of answers. You need to see some change when this team is playing that bad. You've seen 20 games of the Todd Bowles era. Give me the positive and the negatives as someone that watches this team as frequently as you do.
Well, it was much better last year than it
until
has
the
been
Buffalo game.
Until the Buffalo game, yeah. I think there was not only some poor execution by the quarterback, the cornerback as well. There was some coaching question marks, let's put it that way, that I had in that season finale in Buffalo. I think there's some questionable coaching things you can bring up to this point as well. I don't know. He's brought a sense of calm. He's not anything close to what Rex Ryan was. I know it's easy to bash Rex. I know that Jets fans love doing that now, but don't forget that he took them to 2 straight AFC Championship games, and for this franchise, that's saying a lot. Not many coaches have done that. I think Todd Bowles is a good coach. He's a smart defensive mind, without a doubt. He's entrusted the offense to Chan Gailey, and I thought Gailey did a lot of good things last year, but I do think that teams are kind of aware of what Ryan Fitzpatrick and that offense want to do this year. That's why it's so important for other guys, specifically at the receiver position, to step to the forefront, whether that's Quincy Enumera, Robbie Anderson, Jalen Marshall, who's out now, but guys other than Decker and Marshall. And because Decker isn't really a part of the equation anymore, some of these other players have to step to the forefront because they can't be as predictable as they were last year. Even though they found success going primarily to Decker and Marshall, they really need to diversify their offense. So that's really on Chan Gailey and Ryan Fitzpatrick. So to answer your question in a kind of a roundabout way, I think there's some positives that Todd Bowles brings to the table that you saw last year. I don't know what he is right now. To me, he's incomplete. And you're right, a lot of these answers are very Bill Belichick-like, which I think speaks more to Todd Bowles' personality, more so than him trying to be Bill Belichick. I don't think that's it at all. I think Todd's a man of few words. He's really all about action. And when you look at the action right now on the field from his team, it's not very good.
Now, we mentioned Revis. He has the mild sprain. We know that. I don't know if he's going to play this week. I don't know what you're hearing on that. But these big plays, you're exactly right. They have to stop. You look at Todd Bowles. He is that defensive guru. How does he find a way to fix this secondary? Because these big plays, they're just unexcusable. They shouldn't happen at the NFL level.
I think there's a communication breakdown, whether that's miscommunication or the safety and the cornerbacks not communicating with each other on the right level. That's really on the players. I think there's only 2 ways to look at it. If the coaches are at fault, they're not teaching the proper techniques. They're not teaching the proper communication. If it's not, and if you're to believe Todd Bowles when he says that the defense is as simplified as possible, then it's really on the players. Because if it isn't an overly complicated system, then why is there some kind of communication breakdown? Is it an aptitude thing with players? I don't know. There's not going to be an overhaul in personnel, of course. You can bring in a guy here and there, but the players are who they are for this season, for better or for worse. And I think that the safeties have to do a better job in all of this as well. It's easy to pick on Darrelle Revis, and look, he has not played well. I think he's played poorly, in fact, extremely poorly. He's playing off coverage much more than I think that a younger Darrelle Revis would, because he knows that if he plays up at the line of scrimmage, he's going to get beat deep. He doesn't have the deep speed. He never really did have burner type speed, but he to me is a shell of his former self, and I really do think it falls on the players, whether it's Calvin Pryor, Marcus Gilchrist, or the cornerback.
Manish, real quickly before we let you run, as we're talking to Manish Mehta from the New York Daily News, NFL columnist, Odell Beckham. Once again, the antics are getting old with Odell. Very good football player, but he has to tone it down. How did the Giants get Odell Beckham to tone it down a bit?
I think it's internal. He's heard from everybody, whether it's teammates, coaches, fans, I'm sure family members, that he needs to play under control. He is such a terrific player, such a game-breaking force if he plays under control. And for whatever reason, it seems like it's fairly easy for cornerbacks to get under his skin and get in his head. And now the book's out. People know if you're physical with him at the line of scrimmage, he's going to get his feathers ruffled. He has to be a more mature player. He has to be a smarter player because he is such a talented and gifted player who can make such a difference in this league if he plays under control and plays smartly.
Manish, I appreciate the time. Thanks so much. Let's do it again real soon.
Thanks, Zach. Take care.